International break is upon us. The United States men's team will face Germany and Ghana during this window. And since our last pod, the U.S. named a squad for these two upcoming games. We are going to have Stu holding on Wednesday to break down these games, but we thought we'd dig into the squad now, which for those of you watching us, you can see it on the screen. And the big name that jumps out there is Gio Reyna. Which, given the whole context surrounding it, was pretty interesting. At the time of this call, Gio had still not played this season. He since has. We'll get to that in our second segment. But what did you make of Gio Reyna being included in this squad?
Well, also now, this is a Gio Reyna that has been talked to, Zoomish style, with Greg Berhalter. Now he'll be in. I mean, I'm not surprised, and I think we talked about it before, in that Gio Reyna is a recognized talent and has been a member of this team for a while. So now that he is not just on the bench, but he's actually playing, it makes that much more sense. I think he would have come in regardless, but I do think that in general, I know we'll talk more with Stu later in the week, but in general, I think that this is a big window for Greg Berhalter. Not the least of which, right? But for this team, because a lot of the criticism and the recent criticism has been, who are we playing, or why are we playing these games? And we explained the realities of it. But now you're coming up against two good teams. You could possibly say great teams, and so I think that the folded arms are going to be out. I think the daggers are already out and sharpened for Greg Berhalter relative to what happens. But I think he can benefit tremendously from having this team show up and give a good account of themselves against Germany and Ghana. Not a whole lot of new names. You mentioned the Gio Reyna situation. I'm glad that at least on the surface it has been sorted out, and now he's got to come in and he actually has to perform. And again, with Tyler Adams out, I think there is opportunity for others now to step up, because who knows when Tyler Adams is coming out. We find out that evidently he's going to have to get more surgery and continue on with this rehab. So, I mean, we might not see him until maybe next summer, and knock on wood, next summer when it comes to the Copa America type of situation. But there has to be a plan B when Tyler Adams is not with the national team, as important as he is.
On Gio, I know you've said you don't like national team spots to be gifted. Yeah. They should be earned.
National team's not a charity, yes.
But it seems like the logic here on Greg Berhalter's part is, let's just rip this Band-Aid off now. The longer this drags on, it makes it more awkward. So the two of them coexisting over this window maybe puts this whole thing to bed. So can you see that logic?
Well, I put the poll out actually last week when this first came out about what does Greg Berhalter do? Not what you would do, but what do you think Greg Berhalter does? If Gio comes in, and as I said, we'll talk more about him for Dortmund, but he got on the field. So he is playing. He is able to play. Physically, he is ready. Can he play 90 minutes? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? He's still a young player. He certainly should be able to from a physical perspective. But if you're Greg Berhalter, given all that has happened, what do you do? Do you start Gio Reyna, or do you not start Gio Reyna? If you start Gio Reyna, there's almost this, it's not a fig leaf, because it's almost as if you are, for lack of a better phrase, giving in and giving him something in this moment. If you don't start him, then it's, hey, I'm stamping my authority. I mean, it's still, the dynamic is still there. Maybe from the outside, it's bigger than on the inside, but I'll be interested to see ultimately in that first game who that starting 11 is, and if Gio Reyna is one of those starters. Although
his fitness issues make it a little fuzzy, because Greg said he's on a minutes limit. So whatever decision he makes, he can hide behind, he didn't have enough legs to play a full game. So, but there is an interesting tactical question here. As you mentioned, Tyler Adams once again out. Under B.J. Callahan, we saw in the absence of Adams, the U.S. switched to a 4-2-3-1 formation with Gio playing as the 10. Greg Berhalter, we all seem to think, still prefers that 4-3-3. And certainly when Adams is there, he's still going to go with Adams, McKennie, and Musa. But in the absence of Adams here, could you see Greg Berhalter going that route as well?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see him changing some things up. And this goes back to what we talked about, how I do think that Greg Berhalter owes it to this team and owes it to himself, and I guess will be looked at to show that he has changed, that he has evolved, that he has grown. I mean, he should have been over the last 4 years and everything that he has been through. And so his ability to be, to your point, maybe more flexible is important. It's important to note also relative to that position, Leonard Maloney plays over there for Heidenheim. Is that how we're saying it over there in Germany? Don't know much about the player. Another one of these dual nationals his parents. One is American, one is German, and yet another German former youth international that the U.S. I guess wins and brings to our side. He does play a defensive midfield position, and so that could possibly play into what we're talking about here.
Yeah, he's a potential replacement for Adams at the 6. The other name on this list, Johnny Cardoso. I know you're going to roll your eyes.
Johnny.
I will say, though, the last couple of months with Internacional under Eduardo Coudet is the best Johnny has ever played. It's the first time that I felt like the reality matched up to the hype with him. Now, they were knocked out in the Libertadores in heartbreaking fashion against Fluminense, but Johnny struggled in the first leg, which was his first game back from an injury absence. Then the second leg, I thought he played very well, and he's been playing generally well under Coudet in that 6 role. So he goes into this camp with some momentum, and you could see him potentially emerging here. We'll see how it translates to the national team.
And as we come on air here, we find out that Malik Tillman has pulled out, but they haven't named yet a replacement, and that replacement would go into the midfield. Again, the midfielders: Johnny Cardoso, Luca De La Torre, as we mentioned, Leonard Maloney, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Gio Reyna, and as I said, Malik Tillman pulled out, so there will be somebody else there. So of those players, unless he starts changing some things around and throws some real curveballs at us, somebody is going to have to step up.
That Tillman injury is a shame because he's been playing great, scored this past weekend again for PSV against Sparta Rotterdam, but I guess picked up an injury in that game. The other interesting absence is Anthony Robinson. Greg Berhalter saying he's been playing through an injury with Fulham, so he wants to let him rest over this international break. So that creates some question marks at the left back position. No shortage of candidates because even guys like Dest, Scally, Paredes, who were listed at other positions, can play left back.
Even Tim Ream.
And even Tim Ream. And then you also have DeJuan Jones and Christopher Lund, who were the 2 nominal left backs in the squad. So it'll be interesting to see which way Greg goes there.
Yeah. Again, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Serginho Dest, as you mentioned, Juwan Jones, Christoph Lund, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, Miles Robinson back in, and Joe Scally. So there's going to be, I think, a different type of look in personnel. We'll see if that translates into play. The evergreen question about up top and Christian Pulisic, who we're going to talk about even more, is just playing really well. But last window, Christian Pulisic was playing really well too, and it didn't translate to the national team. So we'll see if this is a little bit different here. But Brendan Aronson, Flo, Balogun, Kevin Paredes, Ricardo Pepi, Christian Pulisic, like I mentioned, and Tim Weah. But the continued question is, can Flo continue on? Is he the answer to all the problems up there? Is Ricardo Pepi step up his game, which he has, and can he challenge going forward? But who plays that position and how well they play it in these 2 games, I think, is going to be under scrutiny.
I have to say, though, it's a nice-looking squad. Yeah. We said a couple of names missing, like Tyler and Anthony Robinson, but still, especially the attack. When you see all these names listed together, it really does speak to the talent the U.S. has right now. And,
let's say everybody was completely healthy, and of these players here, I'm just saying that because you mentioned Gio, and nobody was on restrictions, and there hadn't been any deals worked out. It would be interesting because, again, where do you put Gio Reyna? Because with Weah, with Balogun, with Christian Pulisic there, you would think that is the starting 3 up top. Where does Gio go? Does he go into the midfield, or does he prefer him over somebody else? Or if everybody is healthy and Gio is healthy and he can go 90 minutes, Greg might say, you know what? There's too much quality ahead right now, and you're not better than anybody right now in a starting capacity, and puts him on the bench. And then the show that would ensue because of that.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.